Welcome to the Carbonwurks Baguette Racer. So you're joining us, hopefully, to enjoy a little bit of French Cup Racer, effectively that Carbonwurks and ourselves have built, and it's a little bit different. And originally, my life started off in motorsport and racing. So as you can see by some of the photos around me, not so much this, I wasn't driving that long ago, but some of these photos here, you can see I used to race. That's what I used to do. I used to compete, and through various reasons, I decided to stop racing, mainly sponsorship. Funding is very difficult. And I decided to create something, as now we've got a company behind us, create something a little bit different. And that's where the Clio comes in. So if you just follow me around here, this is the Baguette Racer, as it's formerly known as. So this started its life off actually as a separate car. So this is two cars that have been amalgamated together. And how that story came about is originally a good friend of mine, and also actually our mechanic, our resident mechanic, Mr. Sam, or maybe I shouldn't have said his last name, we might blur that bit out. He got me into French cars, and it sounds strange, but we had an Audi R8 at the time, and it was great fun, but I kept going back to Clios because they're just a laugh. They really are. You just thrash the things, and they're just fantastic cars all round. So moving backwards a little bit, originally I bought a black Clio 200 RS, and that was semi sort of track ready. And I did a couple track days, upgraded a few little bits and pieces with the car, and that then spiraled very quickly out of control to what you see now. So from that moment, I managed to source a ex-Clio Cup car or chassis, which then stripped the road going, which was perfectly fine as it was. We stripped it completely down and rebuilt everything from nut and bolts, fully rebuilt effectively. So every single thing that we could upgrade, we've decided to. Don't get me wrong, there's still things that need to be done. This is a project car, and it's not perfectly clean right now, so hopefully don't judge me too much. But there is a little bit of heritage behind this particular car because it has actually been raced before with the chassis that we rebuilt everything into. But anyway, enough about the general overview. Let's get into nitty gritty. What have we done to this car? So let's talk about the outside of this car first. And I won't go into this video into massive details because we'll be here all week because there's quite a few elements to this. But anyway, this car has been wrapped. Originally it was grey underneath, it's a grey shell. It's actually two shades of grey. The inside's a darker grey and the outside was a lighter grey. And this has been fantastically wrapped by UTWS, or Unbeatable Studios. And they've actually also done our M4 and in the very same colour as well because we like it that much. And I hope you agree, it's one of the coolest colours out there, I think. Gives a good amount of aggression, but it's not too much at the same time. It's still sort of, I would say, on the spectrum of being relatively sensible colour-wise, because you can get some wild things. People may think for a track car you'd go quite wild, but we like this. This is the theme. This is kind of the Carbonwurks colours in a way. So this has been completely wrapped, and before you might again notice a few little bits and pieces, this is effectively a track/race car, so it's got a lot of lightweight body panels. So with that, obviously it's difficult to wrap. The shut lines aren't quite perfect because a lot of the parts are composite. So if I take you over to the door, for instance, you can see obviously this moves around. This is a composite door, obviously both sides, that loses a huge amount of weight. We've then changed to plexiglass instead of normal glass. One, it's good in case you have an accident because then it doesn't shatter, but also you lose a lot of weight as well. So fiberglass body panels, and including the rear as well. So again, you can see how lightweight everything is, and it's amazing how much weight we saved on that alone. That was one of the biggest performance upgrades, was just by losing weight. So on top of that, we've got aero catches around the car, so that makes it easy to open, keeps it secure. So these are pretty simple procedure to unlock these. Two pops, then bonnet up, or bonnet, it's not bonnet, boot up in this case. So aero catches on the front and the rear. We also have an adjustable boot spoiler here as well to adjust some of the downforce level. Some people might go, why have you stuck downforce on a front wheel drive hot hatch? And there's a very simple answer. It is amazing the difference that it'll make on well, not only handling, but things like braking performance as well, where the rear, where you've got no weight over the rear whatsoever, you could almost pick the back of the car up. It makes a huge difference in trying to keep the rear a bit more stable. So this is made by Track Car Aero. It's a very nice piece of kit and very cost effective as well. You know, you can spend thousands on aero bits, but this one was quite sensibly priced, and they did a very nice job of that indeed. So moving around to the front of the car. So this also has aero catches on the front. We have created some cooling here. I'll come to this a little bit later, but you can see obviously it looks a bit like Swiss cheese at the moment, and there's a very good reason for that. So this also has, again, aero catches on the front. This is a carbon bonnet. So this is single skinned. There's no hinges, there's no fancy bits in it. It is purely just a single skin bonnet. Not only have we got a carbon on the bonnet, we've also got a carbon roof scoop as well. There's a little bit of a story behind why there's a nice under plate at the bottom here. Originally, this car did have a different type of roof scoop. It looked horrible, if I'm honest. It wasn't a particularly nice roof scoop, and there was a larger hole here. So we decided actually with sandwich plates, there's carbon underneath as well, which I might show you a bit later. And that is amazing, the function that that will give as well. If you're in the car and you're batting around on the track on a really hot day, this car has no aircon. It does still have its heaters in, which you don't use if it was maybe raining, but that does a huge, huge job, excuse me, in keeping a bit of airflow in the car. It's not just about how cool it is, it's about airflow. It's amazing when you're in a race car how stuffy it gets, and that can obviously make you very uncomfortable. So that's the outside. Let's delve a little bit deeper into the gubbins in here. Right, now we come to the exciting bit. Well, at least I think it's exciting anyway. So the heart of the beast. So this started its life off as very much a standard 2-litre 4-cylinder Renault Sport engine, and to be fair, it remains much of that now, apart from a great big supercharger that's strapped on. I will show you that in a minute. So there's quite a few bits and pieces, quite a few different components to this. The majority of this was hand built, the whole package. There's some bits that we bought in effectively, and I'll mention some of those as I go through it, but let's talk you through the whole process. So this is a supercharged engine, so it keeps the standard engine, it's unopened, and it keeps the standard sort of inlet manifold, which other than its appearance, actually there's been a bit of reworking done there. So this has been opened up and bored out effectively. It's been put and polished, so it's a much larger throttle body, much better flow rate through the actual intake itself, which does help a little bit with flow and helps when you start pushing out some power. One of the other cool bits on the top here, this is actually a fuel, not fuel, this is an oil cap cover that we produce, and this is something we actually sell in our store. So that is, it used to be yellow, this particular piece, and I hated it. I really didn't like the fact that it just stood out. It didn't finish the engine bay particularly nicely. So I thought, let's re-engineer that and come up with a nice alternative. So that's cool. The injection, no, sorry, not the injection, the spark side of this is from a company called Ocada Projects, or Plasma Direct. And this controls a lot of the ignition side rather than injection. And this to some people may be a little bit alien, but it does help a little bit with performance in the way that it generates a stronger spark. And on top of that, it does make it a little bit more consistent performance-wise with the actual spark plugs themselves. They create a little bit more sort of temperature, if you like, in the spark plug. Compared to normal. Sometimes if you're running colder spark plugs, that can then foul up the spark plugs, whereas this actually keeps it quite consistent. So those are very key for if you, again, are putting more power through a standard motor, or even in fact a bit more of a tuned motor as well. So to some people, they might think, well, actually, you know what, I'm happy with standard coil packs, and that's fine. That's not a problem at all. But for us, it was important to make sure that we actually had the majority of the sort of ancillaries upgraded as much as we can. Then we come to the likes of the Pure Motorsport top plate here, which then we went off that with a Mishimoto catch can, which is very nice. That's also carbon fibre as well. So it is a lightweight part, but ultimately it's not going to make that much difference. It just looks really cool. And this is actually a screw fitment as well. So if we want to then take any excess oil that's stripped out, we can just unscrew that and away we go. Let's get to the fun bit. So supercharger wise, so Pro Alloy produced this really nice looking effectively boost pipes and intercooler, which wraps its way down the front through where effectively the fog light area is, and then through into the intercooler itself. Then that then bolts into effectively what is the turbo, or in this case, sorry, supercharger. There's obviously a few different types of superchargers. This one works a bit more like a turbo rather than some others. And you've got this enormous K&N filter on the front, which might be a bit excessive, but ultimately I think if you can fit a massive, great big cone in the front of your car, well, you might as well. So this pipework was actually fabricated all from scratch, all by Sam, who I've mentioned before. That was a little bit of a pig, but it basically took the position from down low, which could get a lot of water, to right in front of the bumper. So you may remember seeing those cutouts on the front bumper earlier. That is for airflow. On top of that, you've got the likes of additional cooling. When you get more power, you're going to need a little bit more cooling. So we have a very cool Mocal cooler here. I can't remember if it's a 9 or 11 row or something along the lines of that, but it was spec'd at the time to work very well. Hell braided lines as well. These again custom made. So Hell have been brilliant in terms of supplying and making all of the lines throughout this car. So whether that be the clutch, brakes, they've sorted all of that side out. On top of that, we've then got a Sibtrab cooler for the supercharger itself, which can be seen here. This is a bit unusual. We decided to, instead of have it mounted vertically, where it would be similar to the intercooler or the oil cooler for the engine, we decided to mount this one horizontally. And it might seem a little bit strange, but the big idea or the big plan is a front splitter, which is over in the corner there. I won't show you right now, but there is a great big front splitter, and we've got some knacker ducts, which effectively will then bring the airflow through this cooler. It's more efficient. It means it's better for packaging. So instead of having the cooler the other side and having loads of lines, everything's very neat here. It's taken a lot of design to fabricate all of these custom bits and pieces, such as the mounting points, the brackets. Everything has been effectively custom made, and a lot of that is all done in-house as well. So it's not something that we've had to buy in. We've had to make these bits ourselves. Nothing existed. So yeah, supercharger itself is actually down here. So this is a Rotrex supercharger. I have to say it's worked flawlessly. It's a brilliant, brilliant piece of kit. And it's relatively simple to install as well. There is a bracket kit, which you probably can't see, but it basically holds the supercharger in place. And that's made by a company called Supreme Motorsport, which actually with 0.1 Technologies also made this tow hook cover. And we'll come to that name in a minute as well. There's a bit more about that later on. So that is the main gubbins, the main heart of the car as such. It's putting out just shy of 300 brake horsepower. With some fuel upgrades, there's definitely going to be a bit more power there, but that gives you an overview of the heart. Let's talk about the suspension. Right, so let's get into the chassis part of it. Before we get fully into that, the only other thing to mention is actually we've upgraded this gearbox on this car. So it's been completely refurbished. It's got a gripper differential. There's actually a gearbox down there in the corner, which is the refurbished unit, which K-Tech recently serviced for us. That's going to go in the car soon. It's just got a standard one in there at the moment, but we're going to have some fun getting that one back into the car. But let's move on to the chassis. So this, as you've probably seen, has Nitron suspension. So Nitron do offer a few different options in terms of the level of options for the suspension itself. So this has slow and fast rebound and compression, which can be changed just here. And you might think, why do I need fast and slow rebound? Well, there's a very good question to that, a very good answer to that question, but I'm not going to spend 10 minutes describing that now because you'll be bored, as you might already be anyway. But it has this ability to change the balance of the car in both slow movements and violent or quicker movements, which means it's very tunable. And I have to say, and from the feedback we've received from a tame racing driver who used to race these cars, he said this is one of the best handling he's ever been in, even on road tyres. So this Nitron kit is expensive, there's no two ways about it, but it is absolutely fantastic. It is one of the best quality fitting components you'd ever be able to buy for your car. And they do offer many different applications for many different models, and we've run nitrons for many years in different cars, and it was the first choice, first port of call for suspension, because in our opinions there's not many other companies that come close. They are fantastic pieces of kit, and I'm very, very happy the way that it's performing. It does take a little bit of dialing in. You've got lots of adjustability from camber caster, as well as obviously bump and rebound that I mentioned there, and obviously ride height, but it's dialed in and it's handling beautifully. I'll show you the bag, and I've got a very handy little tool here, which you might laugh, but a broom is what you need to actually keep this from smashing into your head. So there's no hinges on this, so you get a trusty broom, and that's how you prop it up. Brilliant. You don't need anything else. A broom is all you need for this car. Anyway, I'll get rid of that so I can show you the inside. So the rear, same deal. Remote reservoirs like the front. We've actually got these very cool custom made purple hangers. We've got some for the front as well, which we need to work on in getting those installed. But same deal, full adjustment on the rear as you have on the front. So you might have just seen a little glimpse there of the yellow inside. So this has internally routed brake lines. So this has no ABS. It doesn't have any of that luxury. You don't need it for a race car particularly. It's nice to have, but at the same time for outright performance, it's not the best thing. So again, Hell Performance have produced all of these lines, and they are brilliant. Really nice piece of kit. And we've also got an adjustable bias bar. I'll come to that a little bit later on. So that is the suspension, and not much more needs to be said. It is phenomenal. There has been a lot of upgraded components that you won't be able to see. So DNA Racing make the likes of the roll bars, anti-roll bars, upgraded drop links, anti-rotation links. It's got a pure Motorsport strengthened rear axle. It's been fully rebuilt in terms of the bushings as well. So they are solid metal bushes, all by Pure Motorsport. This thing is as close to race cars as you can get. It's even had upgraded drive shafts, E-brackets, so it is super wide on the front track, and it handles all the power that's putting down. So let's go into some tyres here. So these are Nankang AR1s, and the jury's out between tyres which one is ultimately the best. Some people think it might be the Toyo Proxys, other people might say it's the Dunlop Durezas. For me, my personal opinion, I think this is possibly the best bang for your buck tyre you can get. So this has been upsized from a 215 to a 235 width. So it's tight on the arches. I mean, you can see on the front, there's no bumper on there right now, but you'd struggle to get your finger in the arch. I mean, you can see I cannot get my finger in there, but it works. It's brilliant, and more than anything, they are relatively affordable. They're not cheap tyres, they really are not, but they're very, very good for ultimate grip as well as lasting a reasonable amount of time. Wheel-wise, so this has quite a few wheels. I think we've got 3 sets in total for spare tyres, and these are made by Team Dynamics. They're the Pro Race 1.2, possibly one of the most common wheels on the market for aftermarket wheels, effectively for track wheels. This is a custom-made set. Every one that we have has been custom-made, and it is specifically to get the right amount of stance or width on the car effectively. That helps obviously handling, and it looks great as well, which is a byproduct really. But they are a very nice wheel. They're fairly cost effective, and yeah, very happy with these wheels. They'll stay on for a long time. Moving to the brakes. So we have PBS brakes all on this car. So both front and rear are obviously run with PBS. There are other options available, but again, PBS are very, very good. They are, again, one of the best pads I've come across. There are technically better ones in terms of they might last a little bit longer, might have a bit more sort of grab initially, but I'm really happy with them. They give a very good feel on the brake pedal. They're very well priced more than anything. You know, driving on track is expensive. You want things that are trying to minimize cost, and these actually are quite good, and you can get some really cool Black Friday sales for those guys. So yeah, minus a little bit of tyre rubber that gets on the inside of the wheels. It's pretty easy to maintain brake-wise on this particular car. It has 2-piece floating discs on the front by Renault Motorsport. Unlike just being a 2-piece disc, this is a floating 2-piece disc. You might think, well, what's the difference? What's the point in that? It does make a big difference, particularly when you're putting some serious pressure and getting some serious heat in these brakes. It does make a big difference in terms of trying to not drag the pad against the disc as you're going along. So that's the setup on the front. Again, not a cheap upgrade, but it has been so worthwhile, and the braking on this is absolutely phenomenal. There's not many cars that I think would be able to cope with the level of stresses that this one can effectively put on the braking system and still perform. So you might have noticed the caliper on that side is silver. That is because there was a brake line that we were changing and the hose and the pipe got stuck. So ignore that, we're going to sort that one out. So that's the chassis and the brakes. I'm talking a little bit about the inside now, because there's again some cool features inside. So we're in the cabin now, in the hot seat. So these seats, let's start straight off, these are made by Corbu. They're actually custom made again for us, and they've got the Carbonwurks branding in the middle, which is really cool. It's just a nice little touch. Some people may think that's maybe not quite the coolest thing in the world, but let's face it, it's a Carbonwurks development car in many senses, and we like to show what we're all about. So seats are Corbu. They're very, very comfortable, believe it or not. There's some seats out there that will give you a numb bum. These don't. These are really nice, and they're also carbon fibre as well, so they look great. It's always an upside. You might be able to see the panels on the inside of the doors. Again, they're fiberglass. It's not all finished, this car, so you might look and go, why are the door handles cable tied on? Well, it's not finished. It's a project car. There's always things to do, but we focus on the things that are most important, and that's what makes the car go fast and sound good. So plexiglass, obviously windows, or it's not glass as such, it's plastics, but it's the same thing. Let's move to some of the other components. Carbon interior. So these are just bits that we did just to smarten it up, because they're normally just black plastic. These were done many years ago, and admittedly they've had a lot of sun baked on them, but they still look really nice in fairness, and they fit like OEM as well, which is brilliant. So the other part, which I would say this is probably one of the coolest parts of the whole build in my opinion, because it adds a lot to the whole driving experience, and that is the 0.1 Technologies gear shifter. I mean, just listen to how direct that is. It's just mega. The feel of this is fantastic. It's a proper race bred piece of engineering. So that will shave not just tenths, but possibly even more for lap time, because you're not going to be missing gears, and you're not going to be messing that side up. It's going to just make your whole life a lot easier. And obviously being tall as well, it's close to the steering wheel. That's also another factor for ergonomics when you're driving. We've actually gone with we produce these carbon gear knobs for 0.1 Technologies, along with quite a lot of their other components as well. We went with a purple carbon fibre, which is what's on the steering wheel there as well. So this one has the LED shifter lights, so as you drive along you'll see the lights coming up, and that's a product we also offer for many different models in the range. But for this car in particular, it's just quite handy to have for lap times. So let's move to roll cage. This is made by a company called Tyres Motorsports. So you can probably see the plaque on the side of the roll cage there. This is effectively the same as a Clio Cup roll cage. The only difference is it's made for right-hand drive rather than left-hand drive, whereas they all obviously came in left-hand drive. This is obviously slightly different. So that's the basics of the interior. It's been completely stripped out. There's no sound editing, there's no luxuries, there's no aircon, there's no radio. Everything's gone. You've got the likes of, for a little bit of safety, a fire extinguisher here. This is actually a temporary fire extinguisher. So this is Fire Sticks, I believe, is the brand. And admittedly, although it's not cheap, it's very good as a temporary measure. We do have a full fire extinguisher system to go into this, but for the time being, at least we have something to keep us protected. This is what I was mentioning earlier with the air vents as well. So these are directional, so you can change the airflow inside. And that sort of is pretty much the basics of it, really. We've also got a V-Box Sport Race Logic data system, which gives us our lap times if we are timing, but obviously not on a track day, because that's not legal. We'd never do such a thing. And you can see inside, this is obviously where the brake lines are going, and that's where we change the bias, just at the bottom here next to the handbrake. So that's quite easy and convenient. So that pretty much sums up the interior. It's basic. You don't want an overly complicated interior. The only thing we've done is kept the original ECU at the moment. So there's a few other things we need to do, but that's the basics of the interior. Right, so at this point you might be wondering, what does it sound like? And that's a good question. A supercharged, naturally aspirated engine previously is going to sound a little bit different. So let's turn it on and give it a rev. Don't laugh with me trying to get in, okay? There's not much space, but I'll give it a go. I'll try and do it in as most elegant way as possible. Yeah, elegant. Right, let's start her up. It's a bit loud, that actually, isn't it? Cool. Right, well, I hope you enjoyed that little rev off, if you can actually hear me in this tin can. So, yeah, hope you enjoyed that video. Right, well, that pretty much signs off this car. I mean, I have only touched on maybe 60–70% of it. There's so much more to talk about. There's so many little bits and pieces, even things like the heat shield that we had to manufacture from scratch. I won't get into that now, don't worry. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. As I said, we've tried to condense this as much as can, even though I've waffled on for a long time. So, you know, we're passionate about this car. We're passionate about motorsport and racing. That's what we're all about. That's what we love. So anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see what we do next time.